LA City Attorney Hydee Feldstein Soto joins us now live to talk about some of the key issues in the city and other recent headlines. First off, we want to say thank you for getting up early, coming in and hanging out with us, Hydee. One of the things that jumped out at me, because I knew what we were going to talk about, we had that story a moment ago about ADT's security breach, cybersecurity breach, putting a lot of people at risk. I'm sure many people out there have had that letter come in the mail about your information is at risk. I've had one. Now, recently, a lot of people's information there was a hack of the LA City Attorney's Office. 37,000 files were at risk. Now, there's an ongoing investigation. Can you tell us where that stands right now? Do you know, I know that there were thoughts about who did it. Do you know any more about who did it? I know the FBI is involved. Where does that stand as far as how we're looking at that?
I did file a public report with City Council on April 17th, which really went through the timeline of what happened and, you know, who knew what when. So the public report, it's R260237 for anybody who wants to find it. But basically, on March 20th, our citywide ITA became aware of suspicious activity. They first notified the LAPD. They then notified the mayor, and even though it was one of my applications, they then notified my office. So we got to work right away. Council had just left on recess, and by Sunday, we had locked down the application that had been hacked, or it was an incident, really a cyber incident. It was a third-party application. None of the city's systems have been compromised. And even though you say it was 337,000 files, a lot of that was body-worn video, which gets transmitted via a third-party application because it is too big to transmit by any sort of email. So we typically drop it into a shared drive. And I think it was 7.7 terabytes, and 70% of that was video. Okay, so about 2 to 2.5 terabytes was documents. Now, that's still a lot. But when you compare it to the hacks that have happened all across the country, or even right here in LA to Metro or DWP, and I'm not minimizing it because it is people's personal information, but it is something that was contained.
Right, but have you figured out who did it, or where do we stand in identifying? And have they asked for anything?
Assuming that I knew who did it, that is the subject of an ongoing investigation by the FBI and the LAPD. And so I have no personal knowledge. I would only know from the investigation. And so I'm not really at liberty to talk about that.
Could you talk about whether they've asked for anything? Or are they just hacking into stuff? Some people just hack into it for just desirous of doing something.
It's now all been posted on the internet, so whether or not they originally asked for something is kind of besides the point.
When it comes to something like that, now as I understand it, where they were hacking was an issue of trying to give information. When you're having cases, you have to share information with the other side when things are going. So that was kind of how they got into it. But we're all so vulnerable now. I mean, we as individuals are. Is this a constant fight for not only the city, but for us personally to try to protect this data? Because it seems like hackers are everywhere. They're trying to come in to every single window that's out there. And the city is whether it's Metro, as you mentioned, the city is no different. I mean, how do you go about protecting all of this information?
Well, you have to train your employees, and we are in the process of retraining and developing a retraining program. Don't click on attachments from unknown emails. Be careful with attachments that come from an email address that is different than the name that is shown. So if I get an email from John Smith, who I know, but then I look at the email address and it's some other email address, especially if it's a non-domestic country, don't click on it.
So this is the same kind of thing. You guys face the same kind of thing. But so one other question about this, and then we're going to move on. When this all happened, you were criticized by the LA Police Protective League, and they said that you should have picked up the phone and called them right away. Is that a fair criticism, unfair? Because you said a moment ago you were the third person to even find out about it, that other people knew before you.
I can't help how people perceive things. I don't think it's fair to expect me to notify someone who's not my client, like the league, before City Council is back from recess and I've talked to my own client. I filed a confidential report with City Council on the 10th, right before they came back from recess. And the other thing about these kinds of intrusions, you don't want to get out in front. You don't want to create sensationalism. We are in the process of analyzing all of the data. We are in the process of figuring out exactly what was compromised, whose interests are at stake, and we will notify every third party affected by this as soon as we've verified it.
Okay.
But you have to do it right.
Okay. Well, we have much more to talk about. This is not the only thing, so don't go away. We've got a lot more with LA City Attorney Hydee Feldstein Soto. We're coming back right after the break. Welcome back. We're once again talking with LA City Attorney Hydee Feldstein Soto. And, you know, we've got a lot to talk about. We started with the data breach, but we want to talk about one of your initial efforts when you took office, and that was, we covered it back in 2023, and it was to disrupt human and sex trafficking of minors along the Figueroa corridor. And you've talked about recently expanding that. Can you talk about where we are now with that?
We're continuing the efforts along Figueroa Street. I actually found some money in my budget to continue the efforts with the Dear John letters because the police budget has run out of the overtime needed to do that effort. So we're continuing on Figueroa, but we've recently partnered with District Attorney Nathan Hochman and with Council Member Hugo Soto Martinez and with the Olympic Station of the LAPD, it's Captain Rachel Rodriguez, to take the approach that we did on Figueroa up to Western and Larchmont. What has happened is that's an old corridor. It's the old Hollywood track, but there's been a recent uptick in sort of street walking and the human trafficking, particularly of minors. So we're going up north on Western and Larchmont, and we started that effort, I think, about a month ago.
One of our reporters, Kevin Ozebek, went out and did a story on this not too very long ago, and it's deeply troubling when you actually see a face and when we just talk about human trafficking, what does that do to you as a person? And I mean, yes, the city attorney, you're trying to make something happen, but this is a particularly hideous thing. I mean, how can you really make an impact with this? Is it more important to focus on the adults doing this or protecting the children who are stuck in this? Where do you focus?
Human trafficking is a scourge, no matter the age of the victim. It is particularly galling to me when we are dealing with minors, with children. And so that's where I focused my efforts. It was in April of 2023, and I've lived in LA since 1982. I had never seen anything like the parading of children for sex in various stages of undress that I saw.
It's just right out there. It is shocking if you've ever been down there.
And that is why, as city attorney, that was one of my first initiatives. That and saving the housing on Skid Row for Skid Row Housing Trust. Those were the two things that early on in my first year, in my first term, I really focused on doing the work. I'm very proud of the fact that the partnership with the LAPD and with the district attorney's office has continued, and that we are making a dent in it. Just by way of example, we have shuttered, I think it's 6 motels that were crime magnets along the Figueroa corridor, and we're currently investigating and litigating over a nuisance that I think is called House of Huddies, which is right there next to a school.
Well, let's quickly talk. You mentioned Skid Row. Let's talk about the community outreach court, which continues. A lot of people don't understand how some people can end up on Skid Row, and some of it has to do with these minor offenses that can keep them from getting services. And so can you tell us a little bit about what outreach court is? It's almost taking court to the people.
It is. That's exactly what it is. And it was originally the idea of the Superior Court, because what happens is so many people with warrants out for their arrests, with traffic tickets that have piled up over time, wind up afraid to come into the courthouse. Whether today it's because of immigration consequences, or it used to be you had to leave your pets, your children, your belongings outside. And so that's a real deterrent to those who are unsheltered. And so the court came up with the idea, and then the public defender and I said yes, and Mayor Bass and Supervisor Solis provided the political funding for it. And so we are on Skid Row. I send a prosecutor, the public defender sends a public defender, and the court appears either by Zoom or in person. And we are right there to help those who are unsheltered. It isn't just a question of taking care of your legal problems. If you come to our Skid Row court at the Refresh spot on the third Thursday of every month from 9 to noon, we also have service providers all the way around. So whether it's mental health services or it's physical assistance, or if you need medical devices or prescription medicines, or it's Section 8 housing vouchers, we are there to try to help folks with their legal problems and to help get them indoors.
One person at a time. That's how you make a difference. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Hydee Feldstein Soto here with us, LA City Attorney.